I'm Vinny Politan. Great to have you with us tonight. And we begin this hour with a custody dispute out of Arizona that could provide some insight into the ongoing case of cult mom Lori Vallow Daybell. Vallow's niece, Melanie Pulowski, and her ex-husband, Brandon Boudreau, were in a Phoenix courtroom today to settle a custody dispute over their 4 children. Boudreau has expressed concerns for his children's welfare because of his ex-wife Melanie's connection to her Aunt Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell and their beliefs. Both parties agreed to restore joint decision-making for their children, and Melanie will get her full visitation restored in January. Take a listen.
So I'll start with you, Mr. Boudreau. Did you hear the terms of the agreement that Mr. Scoresby stated in court just a moment ago?
Yes.
Last.
Yes.
Did you understand all of those terms that were laid out by Mr. Scoresby?
Yes.
Did what Mr. Scoresby say reflect what you want to agree to today?
Yes.
Did anyone make you feel forced or coerced to enter into this agreement today?
No.
Are you entering into this agreement today with the advice of your attorney who's seated next to you in the courtroom?
Yes.
Under the circumstances, do you believe this agreement is fair and reasonable?
Yes.
Under the circumstances, do you believe this agreement is in the best interest of your 4 minor children?
Yes.
Do you understand if I approve the agreement today, it will be a binding order effective today?
Yes.
All right, so after they played nice with the agreement, the questions turned to Melanie's connection to her Aunt Lori and whether she believed in zombies and dark spirits. Join me now, Court TV special contributor Ashley Banfield. At the end, right, that's when they throw it all in at the end of the hearing, because I think it's an important issue because of what happened to Aunt Lori's children.
Yeah, I mean, if I were in a custody hearing for my children, I would want to know if the other spouse believed in zombies and dark spirits and all the odd things that have surfaced in the case against Aunt Lori Daybell, Vallow Daybell. These are all things that did come up in court, and for good reason. This is not a normal custody case. This is a custody case involving a young woman who, whether she likes it or not, is inextricably connected to the Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell, 2 dead children case. After all, Vinny, it is not lost on anyone that Melanie Boudreau, now Melanie Pulowski, left where her husband, her ex-husband, lived with those children and her, and instead moved to Idaho and got remarried and moved in next door to whom? You remember, Vinny, who she moved in right next door to?
Was it Aunt Lori?
It was Aunt Lori. And by the way, not a big sprawling hacienda with a lot of acreage. It was a condo complex with doors next to each other. So you would think that Melanie would know a lot about what was going on. The weird part is, when Melanie moved in next to Aunt Lori, those children were already gone. So you would think that the first thing Melanie would say is, where are my cousins, Tylee and JJ? I want to see my cousins. Nope, never saw them. Never saw Tylee, never saw JJ. Wouldn't she think that was odd? Wouldn't she start asking questions? Wouldn't she start raising alarms day after day after day, week after week? Never seeing those children? Let's remind our viewers, I'm sure they already know, but JJ was 6, Tylee was 16. You don't just not see kids that age. Dateline NBC asked the question specifically to Melanie Pulowski. She was seated beside her husband, Ian. What about that? What about you living right next door and never seeing these kids? And here's what she told them back in the spring of this year.
Did you ever see Tylee and JJ?
When I moved up there, I did not see them.
No, they were gone.
From November, from when I first got up there, I didn't see them.
Did you ask? Where are they?
I'd asked Lori. I wasn't close with Tylee during her teenage years. She was very independent. So if Lori, said that she was with friends, I just believed her.
Yeah, 16, why not? I never ever once saw her. Never once did I see my cousin who lives right next door to me in a condo complex. Again, not a big sprawling acreage where, you'd have to go way down the drive. No, they almost shared a walk. I mean, they're real close. Never once saw my 16-year-old cousin. Never once saw my 6-year-old cousin. Maybe that's the more bizarre out of, because how do you explain that one away? JJ's not just out with his friends at night. No, it makes no sense. So if I were Brandon Boudreau, I would want answers to those questions in that custody hearing before I let my 4 children go off with a woman who says those kinds of things to Keith Morrison. It wasn't the only thing she said that raised alarm bells for me as well. Keith Morrison, also in that Dateline in May of this year, asked her specifically about the time that the police in Rexburg came to do a welfare check, because the grandparents of JJ had said, we can't speak with our grandson, and we are very worried. We want a welfare check. And when the police came to do a welfare check, lo and behold, wouldn't you know it, Lori and Chad conveniently just up and amscrayed to Hawaii. Convenient? Planned? Here's how Keith Morrison asked the question and how Melanie Boudreau-Pawlowski answered it.
I heard that was planned, the move before Rexburg police came by to even do the check, so I don't think it was, a sudden move.
Well, they came on that welfare check and kaboom, the next day they were gone.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
Doesn't look good.
I think it was planned that they were already going there.
I don't know, Vinny, did your spidey senses kind of take notice on that one?
Yeah, very problematic. I'm not buying what she is selling, and I just don't believe it. To me, it's very problematic. They're just too tight, too close, and there aren't enough answers.
There's also computer documents that Ian Pawlowski found on a computer that indicated that Melanie did believe in the goblins and the spirits and the zombies and all of those things. So I find that to be very troublesome that she answered in court today. Heck no. Maybe that's now. Maybe now she doesn't. Who knows? Who knows what she believes, what Lori believes, what that whole family believes. That whole family has some serious trouble on their hands with the number of people around Lori who are dead. But listen, it's custody, right? It's her custody, and the fight that she has against her ex-husband, Brandon Boudreau, who, let's all remember, mysteriously, someone tried to shoot him dead, right? That's a bit odd. So there's that. So Brandon Boudreau has that also to bring into any kind of court case where he's obviously going to be concerned about the safety of his children. So I had a few questions just about this whole process. And Randy Kessler, who is a family law attorney, but also the author of an aptly titled book, Divorce, Protect Yourself, Your Kids, and Your Future, had a lot of questions for Randy Kessler about this hearing and all these weird things that surround it. Have a listen.
Randy, what do you make of this child custody hearing between Melanie and Brandon Boudreau? I mean, they're not Lori and Chad, and yet there is that connection. Does it mean anything?
Well, that's not setting the bar very high, Ashley, to say that they're not as bad as the Vallows. But, unfortunately, in family law, sometimes it's a battle of the lesser of two evils. Sometimes it's not who's a better parent. That's a tough one for a judge. And we hear this all the time from judges. They say, we've got two really good parents, and I'm really torn because I don't know what to do. This is the one judges hate, right? When it's two bad parents and they feel bad for the children that, neither situation is perfect or ideal. But to me, it looks like he may have the upper hand because he's only got to be better than her, right? It's sort of like that joke about, if two friends are in the woods and there's a bear coming, you don't have to be faster than the bear. You just have to be faster than your friend. So he's just got to be a better parent than her. And that's really the standard. What's best for the children between the two of them, because natural parents get custody unless they're really, really unfit. They have to be really bad. So they can be bad parents. There are a lot of bad parents in intact families. But in this situation, which one's best?
So normal child custody hearings are difficult enough. But then you add the Lori Vallow Chad Daybell case into this mix. And poor Brandon Boudreau, say what you will, and anyone will say anything in a child custody hearing, but that guy had a shot taken on him. His life was in danger. And I'm wondering how much the system takes into account the ancillary dangers that might revolve around a case when there is a party close to it.
Yeah, in a really strange way, the world is upside down in family law. That might be the best thing that happened to his custody case, because it's very hard to prove to a judge accumulation of facts. There was this fact and this day and this letter and this email and this text. A shot that just misses your head by a few inches, you really don't have to say much more. And that's what they're going to be talking about a lot. You're right. You don't want the children in danger, and putting them with mom, if that puts them in danger, it's an easy decision for the judge at that point.
Then there's also just the whole notion that, Melanie just up and left and moved to Rexburg. And then within weeks married, someone who heretofore had been a stranger. So did her uncle. So did Lori. Again, these are all weird facts. They're tangential to Melanie, but do they count?
I think they do count because remember, the standard in this case is what's in the children's best interest, not is she a good mom? Is he a good dad? What's in the children's best interest? And one thing that's important here, the children have been with dad, whether it's because of a good reason or bad reason, they've been with dad. So if you're going to change custody, a change in and of itself could devastate the children. So the change has to be worth it. Mom's sort of got a big burden now to prove that it's worth moving them all the way back to be with me and undoing the last year's worth of stability that dad has provided. That's dad's job, is to say, Judge, leave well enough alone. They're doing fine. Don't invoke another change. They've had enough change, enough instability in their lives. And you're right. It may be a little too late for mom.
And I'm curious about just the whole Rexburg geographic, aspect of this child custody problem. You can't go back and forth every other day or for weekends when you live too far away. So what does the judge say to that? If you're the person who moved out of the jurisdiction where the marital home was, is it tough luck, or does, again, the best interest of the children prevail here and they might have to uproot and go?
I think the starting point is better for dad. Mom and dad agreed to have children and they agreed to have them in that state, right? And that's where they were. Mom changed the equation. And mom says, by the way, Judge, I want you to endorse or condone or facilitate my unilateral decision. Had she talked to dad and said, look, here's why I'm moving, here's why I think it's best, they might have even worked something out. She did it on her own. She did it unilaterally. Judges don't like parents acting unilaterally. They like cooperation. They like parents to try to give the other side notice. It doesn't help mom that she moved without telling dad.
What do you make of just the notion that I'm sure Brandon Boudreau's gravest concern is the proximity that Melanie has had with Aunt Lori Daybell? And that can't be good given the circumstances we have learned about over the last year. What can he articulate in court about that?
Okay, and there was no sarcasm in your voice there, was there, Ashley?
There was none. And that's the problem, right? There's nothing proven yet against Lori. She's sitting in a jail cell, innocent until proven guilty. But Brandon's got kids, and I don't think you want to wait for an official stamp to protect your kids.
Yeah, but here's the nice thing about the civil law, right? This is a civil case. So even though she's innocent until proven guilty in the criminal court, as far as the civil court's concerned, you just have to tip the scales a little bit. And I think the scales have tipped more than a little bit against Lori Vallow. So is Lori Vallow a dangerous person? Is her group and everyone she comes in contact with somehow in danger? That's not really hard to prove. And like you said, best interest of the children, there can be 100 facts. And the facts can include who the children will be exposed to, what kind of family environment, what kind of friends and connections. And none of those facts help mom in this case. So absolutely, if I was dad's lawyer, I'd be saying Lori Vallow, Lori Vallow, Lori Vallow all day long, because guilt by association in this case probably is true on the civil side of it. Children getting exposed to Lori Vallow, would any of us have our children exposed to her, even though she's innocent until proven guilty? I'm sure the judge wouldn't.
Well, the law of averages suggests that most people close to her die. A couple of husbands, a former late wife of a current husband, and of course 2 children. So I guess the question is, it's not a jury that will hear this necessarily. If a judge is looking at these, early circumstances, would a judge have to take into account those law of averages, or could it be coincidences?
Of course, the judge will. The nice thing is that our judges, for the most part, are human beings. And I say that tongue in cheek. There's always a radical, irrational, 1 in a million kind of judge that we don't want to be in front of. But most judges, right, they're going to go to sleep at night and think about these tough cases. They don't like custody cases. They don't want to wake up in the morning and see that their decision caused harm. He awards custody, the judge awards custody to mom, something bad happens to the children. Then it's on the judge. The judge could have prevented that. So judges want to bend over backwards, and sometimes they bend over backwards too far, and someone who might look guilty but really isn't suffers. Bottom line is we're trying to protect children.
when those parties come to a settlement and they make these agreements and then come before a judge for the judge to give his imprimatur on that, what if the judge is uncomfortable about the settlement, and for whatever reason the judge is uncomfortable about the settlement, but sees two parents in front of him that have for whatever reason agreed to it?
So family law is really unique. You know, if someone's in a car accident and the insurance company pays $10,000 and that's an agreement, the judge is going to rubber stamp that. But in family law, even with good lawyers, judges are supposed to look at it carefully. You know, there's a Latin term that we both learned in law school, you know, parens patriae. The state looks over children because ultimately the state's responsible for all of us. And we want to make sure the state protects the innocent, the children. So if for some reason, say a judge sees a custody order that says dad gets custody and mom gets $10,000 worth of illegal drugs per month. Obviously that wouldn't be in there, but something that looks really fishy, the judge is going to look at it a little bit. You know, mom's got the new Porsche, the new house, the new this, and dad gets the kids and no money. You know, is that good for the children? So judges sometimes do ask questions. They'll usually approve them, but if it's a unique situation, and this one I think qualifies as unique, they're entitled to not enforce an agreement made by parties if they don't feel it's good for the children.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the fact that judges are people too, because if there's any facet of the law where you really need to have a heart, it's family law, because the finest line between love and hate exists in that kind of a battle every single day. Randy, thank you for the insight. Appreciate it.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so a bit of business that I wanted to get out from that hearing today. It was interesting because she was asked about that shooting, of her ex-husband, and she admitted she was a person of interest, and then that the investigation later called her an investigative lead, and that is still open, by the way, that investigation of the shooting of Brandon Boudreau. Also, she was asked this question: do you think it's reasonable for Brandon to accuse you of being in a cult just because you're Lori Vallow's niece? She said absolutely not, and that she didn't see what was going on behind her back. Very interesting as well. The other very important part of all of this is that each of these two parties, after much acrimony, actually did decide to restore joint decision-making for their kids. Melanie's going to have full visitation restored in January after this reintroduction period. It's going to be a slow go, but that's been over a year now. And Melanie was deemed in the court records to be a fit parent. So that's kind of where it was. That's how it was and how it's going.
All right. I would be concerned if I was Boudreau. I would be concerned, and you got to, make sure everything's okay here. But hopefully everything will work out well with the kids, and both mom and dad can do what mom and dads are supposed to do. All right.
Amen to that, Benny.
Yep. Ashley Banfield, thank you so much.